So as the show began to get popular, Married with Children, what was the fan reaction? What were people saying to you on the street?
Oh, it was amazing. I mean, I was so thrilled with it. I mean, at first I just couldn't believe it, that it was successful. We never really felt like we were successful, though. That was the problem was, Fox was fledgling and, fighting for ratings. And, in a lot of parts of the country, they didn't get the show. So that from my hometown, for example, didn't get the show. So when I would go home to visit, they would say, so how are you doing? What are you doing? They'd see the occasional beer commercial or something. And so, they thought I was successful because of those things. So it was a slow process. But the people that watched it were, very big fans of it. The ones who actually liked it were very, very enthusiastic about it. And that was great for a while. And then, like everything, it becomes a little bit of for a while I had a little bit of a problem with it. Like I used to think, because it was all, hey, Al! And I'd think, I'm never going to work again. This is it. And so for a brief period of time, I can remember trying to, everybody that would say that to me, I would say, my name's not actually Al. I would then hear myself saying this, and then you'd see, they'd be disappointed in that sort of, which I can understand, and I thought, stop doing that. You're lucky to be working in this job, and you are this guy. You look like him, and that's it. And so then I sort of, once I got over that and started to embrace the whole idea of that and not take it seriously, I was much, much better off.
Talk about having your image on some of the Married with Children merchandising and what you thought of that.
I didn't have anything to do with that stuff. That was Columbia. And then Sony eventually. But I can remember being horrified by a billboard that was on Sunset Boulevard, right by the Chateau Marmont. It was, a billboard. And it moved. Peggy had a frying pan. And it would come down on my head, and my head would then sink down into my shirt, and then come back up, and then this frying pan. And I kept thinking, oh, my God. And on the day I saw it, and I say Chateau Marmont because I had an audition there for a movie that was being directed by Phil Joannou, who did Rattle and Hum, about, that Irish U2. And it was about the Westies in New York. It was something that I actually had known something about because I had lived in that neighborhood. And it was Sean Penn. And it ended up being Ed Harris, who I know and admire. But I was up for the Ed Harris role, and it was about the gangsters in New York. And I went in, and the casting director said to Phil Joannou, just as we were meeting, "Did you see the bill? That's Ed out there on the billboard." It didn't get off to a great start, and then I started this. There was a scene where this character. It was based on real people, and this guy who I was up for had moved out of Hell's Kitchen and lived in Jersey, and Sean Penn had been born in the neighborhood and had gone away somewhere, and they didn't know where. The neighborhood guys. He was actually a cop, and then came back, and now he was undercover. But the idea that I was they came to my house with his brother, with my younger brother, and that was Gary Oldman, marvelous actor. And we were shooting pool, and I was, quietly checking him out, like, where you been, all these years, right? Oh, I was Texas, I was working on a ranch or something. So it was on the surface very cordial. And boy, it's good to see you. But underneath, it was like, where have you been? Are you a cop? Are you? So starting that scene, I'm sorry it took long to set that up. The Joannou says, hold it. did you read this? You read the script? I said, yeah. So you know this guy is a stone killer. And I knew these guys. I said, yeah. Well, I don't see it. I said, he's not killing anybody. It was the right answer, but not to him. You know what I mean? That was it. Okay, well, and then of course Ed Harris was going to get it anyway, so it didn't matter. But that's so often the case, you know. If you had met these guys in a bar, you wouldn't know they killed people for a living. They were like choir boys. But anyway, that was my billboard thing. Didn't help me.
Let's talk a little bit about production on Married with Children. Describe a typical week.
Well, it changed over time. To the end, we were off Mondays. So we'd shoot on Friday, off Saturday, off Sunday, off Monday, come in Tuesday, read it, the table read, and then leave. Which was always a shock to the guest director, you know, who was all set to block it. And see ya. Come in Wednesday, block the show, and rehearse the scenes. Thursday, rehearse in the morning again, and then do a run-through. You know, camera blocking would be on Thursday. And then Friday, come in at 2:30, makeup, hair, a meeting, quick run-through, shoot it for a live audience, and then come back, and then go to dinner, come back, and shoot a second show at 8. And we were out of there by 10:30. 10:45, it was a bad night. And that was me, because I would be go, 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 go. So that was it. It was a great schedule. I hated performing after a while in front of the audience, though.
How come?
Well, because it's not like a play. There are 4 cameras between you and the audience. The audience sits back away up in this peanut gallery kind of thing behind rails. They don't really know where to look. They're there because they want to see you live, but then now there's monitors everywhere. And they miss jokes because they're looking here, then they're looking there. They're trying to look around cameras. So oftentimes they throw your timing off because you set a joke up and then somebody laughs at Kelly's bra or whatever it is that they laugh at, you know. And then we get like half the U.S. Marine Corps in there on the early show, or the problem students, and they'd bring groups in, and it wasn't like the ideal audiences. So I didn't like doing it live.
Is that really what made up the audiences, groups like that, or were there a lot of fans?
There was a lot of fans as well, but intermingled in that was the United States Marine Corps. That if you said boobs, they
Did you have any input with the writers into the stories?
Not much.
Yeah.
I wasn't interested in it really.
Was there ever anything they gave you to do for Al?
I would complain sometimes. I wasn't a big complainer, but there were times near the end where I would say, "Guys, this is not funny," and we've been down this road, and of course, there's nowhere to go after a while. You have to realize that you're struggling to keep it fresh, and there's nothing left to do. You can't. It's over, but you don't realize it.
You talked a little bit about it, but describe the atmosphere on the set.
It was great. It was really, almost always great. It wasn't. I can remember Christina. I used to upset Christina because Christina thought I had a mean sense of humor, and one of our directors who worked with us the most was a guy named Jerry Cohen, who I really like, and I worked with Jerry for many, many years. And Jerry, in this situation, was always in the booth. You didn't see him. You heard them, Ed, could you, in this one, would you, okay, Jerry. And I used to send messages up vocally to the booth, and I could just tell them they want to kill me, But it was always like funny, but making a point sometimes, and Christina thought it was mean. And it probably was, but it was funny. you know, when you're working a job like that, you sort of, I had to kind of keep it crazy, you know. Otherwise you lose your mind. But for the most part, it was great. I mean, it was always, you know, like today, Christina and I are, like, she's my actual daughter, you know. We all get along great. The only one I don't get along with, and I don't think I'm the only one, is Amanda.
Really? How come?
I'm not sure what happened there. I mean, because it was wonderful for 3 years. She was great. I don't know whose fault it was. We just sort of grew a bit apart in terms of, I think, maybe I reminded her of someone she didn't like, an uncle or something. I don't know. But we didn't get along that well. I mean, we argued about certain things, and I don't know what it was. And she changed a bit. I mean, I have to say that when she started out, she was gay. She was gay a long time. She was more or less the female in the couple. You know, she was very, very feminine and cute. And then as the show, you know, 11 years it went, as it progressed, the change took place where she then was the more masculine of the two. You know, she had several relationships over that time. And that became kind of interesting because then as she became more masculine, she became a little more snarky, you know, she could grow a tooth, as we used to say. I remember one instance where she was getting married to the more female, a lovely girl, by the way. And the invitations went out, and I didn't get one, and neither did David Faustino. And now we weren't arguing, we weren't fighting, and I remember, you know, I said to David, well, everyone got one but you and I. And I think Ron Levitt didn't get one. Everyone else did. And I thought, you know, and I thought it was funny. But at the same time, I thought, this is stupid on her part. You know, why would she do this? So I went to her, and why? And she said, this was a very tough call. But I just feel that you would find it amusing that me and Becky would come in tuxedos in a church and walk down the aisle, and you and David would be snickering and finding it funny. I said, Amanda, what is funny about two women in tuxedos walking down the church aisle? I started laughing. And she said, see? I said, well, you know why? Because it is fucking funny. And I'm not going to be the only one that doesn't think so. Well, that was it, you know. But it was funny. She had a little white tux, and, you know, it was just, to me, it was funny. But so, in other words, she may not have been wrong in excluding me, but I said, another time we got in a big fight over something stupid in the makeup room. And she said something about you're a bully or something, and I said, well, you're miserable. You know, it was just bad, in front of everybody, by the way. And then I said, you know, you're not very bright. It's your problem. And she was bright. But I said, but in a way she wasn't, because I said, look, she said, I'm not bright. And I could just see her gearing up like, I'm smarter than you. And I said, no, because I'll tell you why, because I have a button I can push. That button says, get rid of Amanda Burse. You don't have a button that says, get rid of Ed O'Neill. Your button doesn't work. Mine works. Now, this was a mean thing to say. I never was going to push that button, but it was true. I could go to them and say, look, I can't work with her. I go where she goes. Who goes? She goes. So that was kind of bad, you know. But and I don't think she is in touch with anybody from the show. I think she moved back to Georgia, and she's from Georgia. She's from a moneyed family in Georgia. And I think she runs, I don't know what she does back there. I think she's remarried again, and sort of. And she adopted. But everybody else, great.
Talk about working with David.
Faustino?
Yeah.
Well, he was a joy to work with, you know. And that's another thing where he started to imitate my character, like a son would be like a father. And I thought that was very clever. And he was just good. And he loved working on the show. He just loved it. He just got so much fun out of it. And he, you know, we would just laugh and laugh and laugh. You know, he is a great guy. In fact, he just did our show on Modern Family. So we're in touch always.
Excellent.
Great guy. Very talented kid.
Did you ever think about leaving? Did you get offers to do other shows while you were on it?
No, I never thought of leaving. I never thought, I'm playing this all, well, leave for what? You know, after a certain point in time, the damage was done. So you may as well ride it all the way out, which is what I did. Because, you know, there were no awards for this show. There were no Emmys. There were none of that stuff. And so that's not how I kept score. I kept score with how much money can I get?
Did you personally have to deal with censorship issues?
No.
How did the Terry Raccolta campaign affect you?
That was very worrisome to me. When that first came about, and I think the truth of it wasn't a sex joke that got her upset. It was a reference. It was about a joke that Al tells on the show, and apparently it offended her because she was twice divorced or something, of a certain age where she was wondering if there was another husband on the way or not, and on a treadmill. And on the treadmill, so she couldn't change the channel, you know, or something. But the joke was, what's the difference between dog do and older women? And that was something like, the older they get, the easier they are to pick up. And she went bananas. It is funny, but she took offense to it, and then had some uncle, or you know, somebody who was the governor. And she lived in Grosse Pointe, Michigan, which is a very exclusive, wealthy area, very conservative. And so she called in and then, you know, wrote that letter to the New York Times, and then the whole thing. And the thing that we found so funny was that Coca-Cola, one of our sponsors, pulled out from us. And Coca-Cola owned the show. People didn't know that, you know. They made this big statement, oh yeah, you know, this is terrible for the country, and they owned it. Columbia owned Coca-Cola. It was ridiculous. Well, that's, you know, that's showbiz.
Did it change the tone of the show moving forward?
Not a bit. Not a bit.
Good. Talk a little bit about working with Katie Segal.
Well, very much like David, you know, we got along great. She's very funny. She was, you know, she was game for anything, you know, she'd try anything. And she had just a great sense of humor, you know, and, you know, I mean, when you work 11 years with someone, you go through a lot of their, you know, she had some problems with losing the child and horrible things. Christina's mother was ill. I mean, there was a lot of things going on. And everybody sort of, you know, was aware of that, like most people would be anyway. But, I mean, there was a lot of, you know, a lot of trying to help each other out whenever it was needed. And a lot of real friendship, you know. And I found her very funny. And so, no, it was wonderful.
Do you have any favorite episodes?
You know, I probably do. I mean, we did 266 or something. Do you have it there? How many?
I don't
even know how many.
Number.
It was like 260 or something. That's a lot of shows. I like the one where I played the Godfather. It was sort of like on the Godfather theme about the little potatoes, and That was very funny to me. Just like the ones where I rail about the bills. Oh, I don't know. There were so many, but there was one where we started a psychic network. I thought that was so fun. We turned into monkeys. They put a spell on us. That was very funny to me. We did the little dance, and I was imitating like Foghorn Leghorn, you know. I said, boy. And the one where we early on, we did one where Steve and I bought a Mustang, and we went out on a Mustang and we refurbished it, or we made it wonderful, and then we took it out on its, you know, maiden voyage, and then it was a stolen car. The police got us, and I was protesting, and they shot me with a stun gun. They couldn't show that, the stun gun, so it had to happen off stage. But they bring me in, and I'm like comatose, you know. And I remember in the rehearsal of that, in acting out the stun gun effect, that Michael Moyer, one of our producers, was laughing so hard that he was on the floor. I mean, it was so funny. We also had one of the longest laughs ever. I know that I think there was one really long in Jack Benny, and there's been long ones, and I don't know if we held the record, but there was one where I had a blonde wig that I wanted her to wear, and I said, put this on, and then I threw over my shoulder and ran her up the stairs. That got a tremendously long laugh, like minutes. So we had a lot of fun with that.
How did it affect the show when Michael Moyer left?
Badly. I mean, the problem for us was that Moyer and Levitt counterbalanced one another. You know, one was whimsical, one was a little grosser, one, you know, and they would sort of balance each other out a bit. And if one was gone, it became too much of that one thing that they had. And so there was no more counterweight. And then Michael came back and Ron left. So we had the same problem, just a different guy. So we were struggling there, you know, and I think a lot of that is very much a product of just burning out. You know, it's inevitable. I mean, there's only how many shows can you do on a couch? You know, so that's what happens.
Why did the series end?
I think it actually, because we were kind of set to do one more year, but what I think happened, and I could be wrong, but what I think happened was that, you know, affiliates who buy the show in syndication, and it was not cheap. I'm going to say it was like $1 million an episode. But smaller affiliates can't take too many more shows because they have to buy them. So they don't need 266 shows to cycle through their year of reruns. All they need are 100, you know. 266, you can almost show a new one every day of the year. And they don't need that, so they start begging the Sony, and please don't make any more. We can't afford it, and that's what eventually I think happened.
Were you ready for it to end?
Yeah. But I wanted that one last year because I had Moyer and Levitt lined up to come back, the two of them, and I wanted a last show. We never did one. I mean, we did a last show, but we never did a last show. You know, we never wrote a show that was the end.
Right.
It was just an episode.
Yeah, tell us about that episode.
Well, I think it was Kelly's wedding or something, and that didn't happen. But I remember that these guys, you know, the Fox guys, they came in on a Wednesday. The show's going to be shot Friday. And they said, you know, guys, just in case... And this was our last show of the season, and it turned out to be the last show of the series. And we kind of suspected we were on thin ice at this point. And they said, "Do you think we could change this and make this, if God forbid, the last show?" And I said, "No, I'm not changing this." This is not going to, if this is the last show, it is what it is. It's not a last show. And you're not going to piece it together and change it and throw something in with a day and a half before we shoot. So, okay. They try these things, you know. So, no, we never shot one. Which I could never understand because, as I said to Peter Chernin over there, you know, we'll win the night. You know, you advertise it as the last show. It'll get huge numbers. I don't know. But I think they weren't quite, you know, like they are. They weren't quite positive they were going to cancel it. They weren't sure. And God forbid, you know, they would make that decision, somebody's head rolls, you know.
Where would Al be today?
Oh, God. They keep talking about doing, you know, a reunion show, you know. And I said, I'm fine with it. You know, you got to get everybody. And I think the first time that was, they asked everybody, and Christina said no, she didn't want to do it. Christina didn't want to go back, you know, and do Kelly. And so I said, well, if she's out, I'm out. And then now I think she'd do it, and then I don't know if there's other problems now, you know. I don't think it'll ever happen.
Do you ever watch the
Al's
reruns?
not real, by the way, so I wouldn't know where he's sitting here.
Do you ever watch the reruns?
Rarely. It's not that I avoid them. It's just, you know, sometimes I'll be channel surfing and I'll see it's on, and then I usually check which one. And if it's one of my favorites, I'll watch it. If it's not, I don't watch it. I've seen them, you know.
You had a little mini reunion with the cast on David's web series Starving.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
I did 2 of them, actually. Mm-hmm. It was funny. You know, I knew the guy, too, Sam Cass, who was involved in that. I've known Sam for years. He's a writer. And it was an odd show, you know, and then, of course, it got crazy. It got so... And I told him, Dave, you're way over. You're way over with this thing. You know, it's gotten sick. But he loved it. He loved doing it. It was, you know, he was making fun of himself, which that's a little tricky, you know, I find. But it was fun. You know, the first one I did with him, you know, he came and wanted a loan, you know, and I wouldn't give it to him. I thought that was funny.
That's a good one. So what do you think is the legacy of Married with Children?
Oh, God, I have no idea. What's the legacy of any television show, you know, any sitcom? You know, our producers used to say, and Michael Moyer in particular used to say, to any controversy that would arise concerned with the show, he would say, look, guys, anybody who watches a sitcom to learn something is in trouble. It's just a laugh. It's no big deal. It's no big thing. It's not going to change much, you know. And I feel the same way about it. I mean, I think it was fun and amusing much of the time. And that's it. It's not to be thought of too much.
While you were on the show, you did a couple of movies. So
I did a couple of movies.
Tell us about your experience doing Dutch.
Dutch was written by John Hughes, produced by John Hughes. John Hughes, at that time, had great successes in previous movies. A couple of them I had seen. Trains, Planes, and Automobiles I liked a lot. The other big ones, the holiday thing, I forget the name of it, you know, where the family leaves and the kids at home.
Home Alone.
Home Alone. Some great stuff, some very funny stuff. He was sort of at the end of things in a little bit with Dutch. And I remember when I was offered the role, I said to my agent, you know, people are going to be confused. It's like Dutch Schultz or, you know, Dutch. It doesn't tell you anything about the movie. Anyway, in the shooting of the movie, the director was Peter
Feynman.
Feynman. Wonderful guy, by the way. Funny guy, Australian. And I was having trouble with some of the dialogue. Just that it didn't, wasn't that it wasn't, well, I had a hard time getting my mouth around some of this stuff. It was almost like, do people talk like this? It's a little weird. And I kept having this problem, and I couldn't figure it out. And then Peter wanted, ideally, he wanted a lot of improvisation, which I don't like. I mean, I don't mind doing it if it just comes up, but I don't like to have to feel like I've got to do it. Like I got to write the show as we go. I mean, there's some actors that love that. I am not one of them. I want it written. And so I had some trouble with that. And some of the scenes that were improvised that I did reluctantly. Fireworks scene was one of them. I hated it. And there were a lot of things, making faces, how to show the kid how to hitchhike. Hated it. Can't watch it. And so there were a lot of those scenes in it. Some people love that movie. And I honestly and people I respect like that movie. I didn't like that movie. And I didn't hate it. I just didn't like it. And yeah. So and then it opened. Oh my God, this is so funny. I remember they had an idea to promote it, to publicize it, and that was that during the holidays, they wanted to take me and Ethan, the young boy, put us on a bus and do a truck and bus stop, or what do they call that? Truck and bus, truck and something, of the South, small towns, over Christmas. Drive in and we're Dutch, So I thought, well, maybe I have to do this. I'm not sure what my contract says. I don't know. I certainly don't want to be, not cooperative. It was a lead role in a movie, a John Hughes movie. So I met with the publicity people in the commissary at Fox, and we were having lunch. And Barry Diller is walking by, and he says, "Hi, Ed." Now, of course, I knew him from before. Hi, Barry. Barry's not the warmest guy you've ever met on the surface of things. The head like a rattlesnake. I mean, he's kind of a scary-looking guy. And he said, I saw the movie the other day. I saw the screening of Dutch. I said, oh, I hadn't seen it. It's quite good. I said, good, Barry. I'm glad you like it. Why are you here? Now, there were 12 of us at this table. All of these Fox people. Well, we're discussing with Ed about this truck and bus tour we're going to think of doing over Christmas, the Christmas holidays, to promote the movie. That's the worst idea I ever heard. He looks at me and says, do you want to do that? I said, well, not really. Worst fucking idea I ever heard. And walked away. Now, there wasn't one other thing to be said at the table. Silence. People are eating, drinking. Nobody's speaking. 12 people. I said, well, we're going to have lunch? That was it. We never did that, Now, the movie opened. And I remember they canceled the big opening type of thing with, and even I knew this was not a good sign. Oh, there's a thing that's silly because The Terminator is out now, and Robin Hood with Kevin Costner, and John Hughes can't make it because John Hughes is in the middle of writing something and he's in retreat. So anyway, the movie opens, and I called my agent the next day and I said, "How'd the movie do?" And he said, "Not good." I said, "Well, what?" And he said, 475. I said, 475 million? No. 475,000. Now, this is nationwide. This is a disaster beyond, nobody saw it. And it was very funny. So I called Peter Feynman and I said, Peter, He said, oh, dear God. I said, have you talked to John Hughes? No, I put calls into him, but he hasn't returned my calls. I said, oh, okay, well, I haven't seen him. Now, John Hughes had been calling me every day during the shooting of it, every day. I mean, like my best friend on earth. In fact, I even complained. I said, I can't get rid of the guy. He calls me all the time. I had to go to his house. I met his children. We had dinner with his wife. We're going to do this movie, that movie, this movie, that movie. Not a word. I never spoke to John Hughes again. Never again in life. I went on the David Letterman show. And he, oh, John Hughes, you did the thing with John Hughes. And yeah. Well, what was it like to work with John Hughes? I said, well, I liked John. It was great working with him at that time. I said, but I got to tell you, Dave, I said, if I was, I'm on the Letterman show. If I was in a bar and I got in trouble, I wouldn't want to be with John Hughes. Because he'd be the first one out the back door. Now that, of course, went right to John Hughes. Well, we never spoke again. And he never spoke to Peter Feynman again. Now, John just died not too long ago. So I was sorry to hear he died. I just didn't want the guy to die. But he was a strange man. He was a kind of a guy, he was a brilliant guy, chain smoker, would light one off the other. And the story I heard about him, and it was probably true, was that any failure that he had, he would bury. He couldn't deal with it. He would just forget it, and so that chapter was no longer in his life. So I think that's what he was about.
You were also in both Wayne's World movies.
Yeah.
Tell us about that experience.
Well, that was an okay experience. I mean, that was a thing where I was the manager of Stan Mikita's donut shop, and that had very funny possibilities. And it was almost pretty funny. It wasn't quite as funny as I was hoping it was going to be. I liked working with those guys. They're crazy guys. We had the same manager, Bernie Brillstein. Unfortunately, I think they weren't getting along when we were shooting it, and so they were, they had different camps, and so that's never too good, But it was just a little cameo, it wasn't. I mean, I hardly remember anything about it. I think Myers wrote my part. Very smart guy, very. It's Saturday Night Live, Again, it's that hip humor, Not a big fan of it that much, too cool for the room, that sort of thing. I respect the Lorne Michaels. They did some wonderful things. And they still do. It's like a club.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about some of the shows you did with David Milch.
Yeah.
So you did, in 2001, you did Big Apple.
Yeah.
So tell us about the character you played on that and the premise of the show.
That was a very strange situation because how I came to know David Milch was through a restaurant, Drago's, on 26th and Wilshire Boulevard. I used to eat there alone after I would shoot Married on a Friday night. I would go there late, have a little wine, little antipasto, and oftentimes he would be leaving with whoever whoever he was having his dinner with. And we started out with like a nod, I knew who he was. And then it progressed to like, hello, Ed. Hello, David. That's where it ended. How are you? Nice evening. Yes. Enjoy. Good night. My agent calls me and says, look, David Milch is doing this project, Big Apple. It's going to shoot in New York City. He wants you to play this criminal, this Westie. And I read it, and I thought, this is great. I want to do this. So he wants to meet with you. So I went and met him in his office. And, David, you go in David's office, there's script pages covering the floor. He writes on the floor because he has a bad back. So he was with another guy. let's get some lunch. So we go have lunch. And he said, you read the script? I said, yeah, it's wonderful. He said, well, I want you to do the role. I said, great. I said, yeah, I always wanted to play a Westie. He said, what are you talking about? I said, the role, the guy, the Westie. He said, no. No, it's the cop, Mike. And I said, Mike? Now, I have no idea what happened there. It was the lead. And I said, well, Dave, honestly, I didn't read it for that role. I don't, I was reading it for the other guy, and I'd have to read it again. He said, well, it's the lead. And I said, okay, well, I'm probably going to do it. I said, but why do you want me to do it? I mean, why me? He said, I just always, I feel about it, that restaurant thing back and forth over those years. So, of course, I did it. And it was a wonderful experience. I mean, he's one of our greatest writers, in my opinion. He's a phenomenal writer. And we're very close. He's very eccentric. And I get a huge kick out of him. And he's a very, very special writer. So that experience was really great. And that experience really I took away from it. Of course, it was not successful. CBS, and I think the Les Moonves and Dave were not exactly the greatest combo for whatever reasons. And quite expensive, on location in New York City. The cast was amazing. You had Donnie Wahlberg, Michael Madden, it's just on and on, all movie guys. David Strathairn, Kim Dickens. Who's the black actor I'm leaving out? Wonderful actor. I don't know if it says there.
I don't know.
Oh, shit. He's so good. Anyway, it was a wonderful experience. But what I got from doing that was that it was the first time on film that I had big-time scenes, what I would call big-time scenes, where you really had to know what you were doing. And when I saw those scenes, I said, yeah. I always knew I could do that kind of work. Now, this sounds like I'm patting myself on the back. It's actually quite late in my life, but that I got a sense that this is something De Niro, any of those guys, I can do this as good. Now, whether that's true or not, I believed it and do believe it. And the point I'm trying to make through all this, I guess I'm actually bragging, but is the writing. See, it was the writing. If you get the right writing, the good stuff, and you screw it up, you're in the wrong business. But if you don't, then oftentimes you get that result, which is a very happy thing to watch. And that taught me something. You know what I mean? Like, if you take Laurence Olivier, I don't give a shit. You put him in a soap opera, he'll be bad. And you've seen Meryl Streep be bad in certain movies, the one she did with Roseanne, for example. Horrible. And I consider her the greatest actress since Marlon Brando. You know what I mean? I love Meryl Streep. Any one of them. De Niro. I've seen De Niro do stuff, come on, are you kidding me? But it's the writing. And once you know that, then you're much better off. It's like getting on a plane, when it's taking off, you don't have to flap your arms. It's designed to take off. You can sit there with a glass of water or something. So that was a great experience.
And then you worked with him again on John from Cincinnati.
Yes, another great experience.
Yeah, so tell us about that.
That was one where he wanted me to do it. I wanted to do it. I wasn't sure how I was going to do it because it was really a very unusual character, a little dementia, and but I just jumped in. With Dave, you jump in. You don't. There's only one way to go, and that was a really, really wonderful experience. The show, It had its fanatical fans, as those types of shows often do. It wasn't successful. It had its problems. But boy, he can write some great characters, you know. And as an actor, it's just wonderful. And the cast was great. So that was so much fun to do.
Why do you think it wasn't successful?
Well, the theme of it was, I think, not only confusing to some people, but I think it was a bit, in a strange sense, offensive to them. I mean, I think that they said, well, we don't believe it. We don't believe this guy. Well, who is he? Is he Christ? It offended certain people's religious notions somehow. Because I remember Dave said, well, you don't believe it. Would you believe in God? Now, most people are going to tell you yes. Well, if you believe in God, why couldn't you believe in this? You know, it's practically the same thing. Well, that offends people. Because, of course, it makes sense. But don't say that, you know.
Did you think John was God?
No. I thought he was, and you know, I used to talk to Dave about it, but he said some other dimension, another dimension. He ended up there on some sort of mistake, and he couldn't get back. And but more of an evolved, you know, group of people or group of whatever. But I love the idea that he could help people see things on a clearer, you know. And he originally got the idea from Space Odyssey, the movie Space Odyssey, the Kubrick. And it was working, and originally it was called John from Detroit, and it was a pool hustler who was butchy, not surfer. But when HBO got in business with Nunn, the surf noir writer, they said, can you fold that Detroit story into the surf thing? And Milch goes, of course. Didn't know a thing about surfing. But he did it, you know, and it was. I thought there was genius in it for sure.
After that, you did the reimagining of Dragnet.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about that.
What happened there was I was supposed to do Deadwood, to follow John with, or no, wait a minute. Deadwood was before, right? John, right?
Yeah.
Sorry. After I did Big Apple, unlike John Hughes, David Milch wanted to work with me again. So he started this Deadwood project. And in the way his process works, the way he does things, we would have dinner once a week or twice a week at Drago. And he would pitch the story ideas. This was based on a true story, Deadwood. And at first he wanted me to play the sheriff, and then, you know, it was all moving around in his head. And then he got on to Swearingen. And he said, I want you to play Swearingen, because Swearingen was from Chicago in his real life. And he was a pretty big guy, and he was a tough guy, and he had a crew. And he started out as a guy, they were miners. He was a pretty good guy with a pick. But then he got into like the whorehouses, and he got into and he was a good guy with a knife, and he liked beating people up. And so I was going to be Swearingen. And so the way I talk in real life was sort of the way Swearingen talked on the series when you saw it. Because he sort of wrote for me as I said, we've said this before, that's what writers do. He sort of had me in mind. And I kept saying to him, Dave, I have never worked for HBO. Big Apple was for CBS. I said, I have had trouble with HBO. HBO has never really wanted me in anything because they were the class of the field. They thought, this is Al Bundy. We don't want to work with Al Bundy. Fuck that. So he said, I got it covered. Don't worry. Well, he didn't. You know, he was trying to figure out the right time to do it, to get me in. And so, of course, it didn't work. And then he came to me and said, we got a problem. I wasn't surprised. He said, would you be willing to read for them? Now, I had been involved in this for a year. A year. I said, Dave, they don't want me to read. They don't want me in the thing. Let's just cut and run. You get somebody, it's fine. No, I can push this through. So I said, okay, I'll read. So I showed up someplace in Century City. I swear to God, they had a table 20 feet long. The reader was at one end. I was at the other. I never saw anything like it. The executives were in between. The reading was not good. It wasn't bad. It just was no good. So now he says, would you screen test? You know, everything told me. If I didn't love the guy, I would have just said no. Long story short, I screen tested. And it was a full-on screen test. I mean, it was with costumes, makeup, a set. And it was the scene in the pilot where they were in the bar and they were told that there was a family slaughtered on the outskirts of town, and they were trying to get the vigilantes to go. Swearingen didn't want them to go because he knew who did it, and it wasn't Indians. So he was going to offer a free pussy to all the guys that stayed, and let's have clear heads. Let's go in the morning when we're not drunk and fucked up. You know, that scene. Great scene. So I, by the way, knew this scene for a year. So I did it. Good. But I could see Milch was in the room. He wasn't happy. You know, I mean, I knew that he already knew this wasn't going to fly. So the next day, he called me. I'm in my car going down to Torrance where I do this Brazilian jiu-jitsu. This ain't going to work out. I got the word from, what was his name, you know, head of HBO at that time. Got fired later for the thing with the woman. We beat up the woman or something. Huh? Chris. It ain't going to go. I said, okay, Dave, fine. It's fine. Don't worry about it. You know, it's good. It's, you know. Okay, all right. Click. 20 seconds later, my phone rings. I think, it's him again. You know, he feels bad. Hello, Ed, Dick Wolf. Hey, I'm fucked on this Dragnet thing. They had Danny Houston. What happened? We had to fire him. I said, why would you fire Danny Houston? You know, Danny Houston's a pretty good actor. Well, he's just not cop-like. And I got to show up and running. I don't have Joe Friday. I said, you still don't have Joe Friday. That's a procedural. That's 1 hour, Dick. That's 14 hours a day. And he tried to talk me into it. I said, no way. So I hung up. Meanwhile, I was just come off the Deadwood thing. And a long story short, he kept after me, and I made a demand, salary-wise, that I knew he would never meet. And said, I can't do it. I said, no, I'm going to watch it. Good luck. And a week later, he came up with the money. He got half of it from ABC. So now I opened my big mouth, and now I'm in. And I did that thing for a year and a half. And by the way, it was lovely with him and Waylon Green and everybody concerned. We had a very good time. It was just too brutal a pace. I mean, they built the pyramids like that. And so after a year and a half, we just, you know, enough.
So in light of the Deadwood HBO thing, how did you get greenlit to be on John from Cincinnati?
Well, they, let me see. Albrecht was still in. It wasn't the lead role. And I think they threw Dave a bone. Because I think what happened was they said, well, you know, we fucked him on the other thing. And he wants this guy, and let's just, you know, we'll give him this crazy, goofy ex-cop thing, you know. And I did have to say, I had, at the screening afterwards at the party, Albrecht came over to me and was very complimentary, you know, and said, well, I think I might have misjudged you. I said, that's okay. I never take this stuff personally. You know, I don't. I mean, you know, you think about it a little, but I'm pretty good at letting things go. That was a tough one, though. That I would have to say, in my career, that was the toughest one not to get, because I just thought, and Ian McShane is a friend of mine. And when Ian did it so wonderfully well, I didn't even know how I was going to do it, really. You know, you don't know till you get there. I felt that I could do it well, but when I saw Ian do it, I think I saw 4, and then we had lunch. And he was very nervous at lunch because he knew what had happened. And I said, listen, I don't even think about doing it now. You know, I've seen you do it before. That's it. I mean, you're marvelous, and that's it. I don't think I could have done it as well. It's yours, and good for you. And I meant that. I know Milt said later, in a statement later, that after Deadwood was canceled, he said, if Ed O'Neill had done, we'd still be running. I don't know why he said that. I mean, really, I don't know why. It's very flattering to me. At the same time, I don't see how that would have been true. I mean, you know what I mean. I just don't know. And it was very insulting to Ian, who I don't think David liked. Now, I'm just guessing, because he never said. He was, see, whenever you shove an actor down David's throat, I don't care if the guy is the greatest actor on earth, you know. He doesn't like it. And I know he said, the guy's a Brit. He's not from Chicago. He's a little guy. And so there were those problems. You know, but they're not my problems. I mean, I thought Ian was fabulous. I really do. And I think most people did.
So you were also in a couple episodes of The West Wing.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us about that experience.
At tail end of the series, I played the governor of Pennsylvania. I really enjoyed it. I love working with Martin Sheen. And I had worked with John Spencer in theater in New York. We did a David Mamet play at the Long Wharf called Lake Boat together. And a real theater guy, you know, John was a crazy son of a bitch, but I liked him. So that was and I knew Jimmy Smits a little bit because he had worked with Milch, you know, a lot. And so I knew a lot of the guys on that show, and it was just a lot of fun to do.
And then you reunited with Katie Segal to do 8 Simple Rules.
Yes, that was more or less for old time's sake, you know. Yeah. I did that, and it was fun. Yeah. And, yeah, I mean, you know, I played her ex, something or other. It was kind of fun.
I think we're going to stop there
yeah.
and change tape, and then we'll do Modern Family.
Okay.